One of the most commonly asked questions is, how do you get, what's happiness? How do you get happiness? And the answer is relatively simple. The answer is gratitude gives you happiness. And the more that you are aware of what it takes to live life, the easier it is to be grateful. And so I'm going to tell you a story. I already told you the moral of the story, more or less. I'm going to tell you a story about history, about how important history is. Now, most young people would say that history is really boring. However, all of us have a history, and that history goes into who we are and what makes us up. So I'm going to tell you a story about a young man who has a goal, who has a dream, and is willing to do whatever he has to do to make that dream come true. And how that young man has a family history of doing exactly that. So it starts 7 generations ago, 6 generations ago. It starts with a man in Germany, a farmer who wants to go to America. And so he sends his young wife, who's expecting their first child, to America. And on the way, when she gets to America, she gives birth to a young son and discovers that her husband in Germany has died in a farming accident. And um, so things don't always work out the way we think they're going to, and you can give up and quit, or you can move on and get a new plan. And so she got married to another man in Nebraska, and at about that time they had the opportunity to um, do homesteading. Now, with homesteading, you got a big, huge piece of property, but you had to work the property for 5 years, improving it, putting some kind of a dwelling on it, and planting trees. The problem with that is, if you don't have very much money, it's a pretty meager beginnings. And so they built a one-room sod hut, and they planted 5 trees, and they went down every day to get water at the lake and bring it up and plant their trees. And again, everything was going pretty smoothly. They had 3 more children, so they had 4 children, and then she had another baby. Unfortunately, she and the baby got sick, and they died. And so the father was left with 4 children, the oldest of which was George. And George was 15. And they were just starting to build the Union Pacific Railroad. And the Union Pacific Railroad was going through, and so he had to farm the little children out, and gave George, the oldest child, at 15, decided to go work. So he had to quit school, and he went to work for Union Pacific Railroad. And World War I broke out, but the family stayed together, and George was able to help his father raise the children. George got married. He had 3 children of his own, 2 boys, and the oldest was George. George and his brother fought in World War II, and George had saved money so that he could build a home in California, which is where he and his brother had decided to go. And so he built this home. He went to the service, and then when he came home, they went to Los Angeles to build this home. And unfortunately, contractors stole all the money that he had made, best laid plans. And so he and his young wife and his brand new daughter went and lived in a chicken coop. And they renovated the chicken coop, and they had to go into the main house to go to the bathroom, and it was a very difficult life. And with the money that was stolen, he instead had to work all day long, and then take little bits of money to buy wood, nails, and stuff like that. And eventually he built their home and he raised 3 children. Um, but he wanted to give his children what he didn't have. He wanted to make it easier for his children. And so the older daughter had lived pretty hard times. The 2 young boys had pretty much what they wanted. And they didn't do too well because they hadn't learned the lesson of doing what you needed to do and working for what you wanted. The daughter grew up, raised children who learned the value of hard work. And they had children, and the end of the story is about a young man who has a great-great-grandfather and a great-grandfather up watching over him because he had a dream to do what he wanted to do and what he loved to do. And so we have the sod hut, and we have the chicken coop, and he was willing to live in a renovated shed, work a full-time job, go to school full-time so he could live his dream.
Thank you, Grandma.
Mm-hmm.